Hi, I'm Shu Yu, and this is my first channel, and I call it Ethics in Philosophy. Just according to this name, you will know I talk about something about ethics of philosophy. I will introduce several philosophers and their thoughts, their ideas about human being behaviors and the whole society. Before I introduce the first philosopher, I want to introduce ethics. So, in general, ethics is divided into three parts. The first part is normative ethics, and the second part is mental ethics. The third part is applied ethics. And now I will talk about a story which contains a very complex but also simple question as the first episode main content. So about this story, we need to mention two philosophers. The first one is Plato, the second one is Socrates. Today, this story is in a book called Euthyphro. It's a very famous book. So Plato recorded his teacher Socrates' discussion between another man in this book. About the content about this discussion, Socrates just mentioned a question about the one command theory. So now let us to talk about one question. When Socrates and Euthyphros to talk about parity, they talk about human behaviors first. People always say some behaviors are wrong, but some behaviors are right. For Socrates and Euthyphro, they confront two options to think about this question. The first one is the action is right because the God think it is right, or just God judge it is right because it is right. I know it seems like a little weird question, but there are actually two options for them. So in the conversation, Euthyphro first gives two explanation for pious behavior. The first one is what just do what like he does, bring his father on the charge of wrongdoing, and he also suggests that pious behavior should be loved by God. In here, Socrates makes agreement with Euthyphro. The agreement is that sometimes God thinks one action is wrong, but in another situation, the God may think the action is right. It is a little paradox, right? And based on this situation, the Euthyphro just proposed another explanation for pious action, which is the pious action should be loved by all gods. So now we will confront a dilemma. Before I talk about the dilemma, I want to talk about one conception Socrates just proposed. For a lot of different religions, they tend to have similar moral codes, just like don't murder, don't lie, don't steal, this kind of rules for people. And in here, some people with religions upbringing, they won't do something just like murder because the God doesn't command them to do that. So if they do this kind of thing, they will do something against God. But in here, we will talk about whether sometimes people don't do some things just like murder because of God commands us not to do that, or whether God commands us not to do that because it is wrong. The dilemma appears because this issue is a question of dependence. In here, more questions appear. For example, what should we do if God were to command us murder? Does it mean murder is a right thing rather than a wrong thing? So, does it also mean God changed the moral valence just by changing his commands? There is a way to solve this dilemma. The solution is we reject that. God's commands are not arbitrary, which means God commands us to do something because the thing is right. Commands us not to do something because the things are wrong. But in here, we got another problem because general, when we talk about the God should be originator for all things, right? So they can do everything they want. So in here, we just make right or thing a part of God's nature. It is a paradox and weird in here, right? So this question still unsolved now. So how about you? Do you have another thoughts about this kind of question? Please think about it. For next episode, I will introduce another philosopher and this philosopher's ideas and thoughts.